Open source is great, everybody loves it.
Hi everyone! Today I have invited our little baby dog to come join me to film this video. And in this episode, we have invited our application engineer Dima to come sit down with us and talk about open source. If you're interested, keep on watching the video.
Well, I'm not really a historian, but well, as you know, open source, both open source hardware and open source software, basically it refers to hardware and software which has all the schematics and the code openly available, and in some cases it depends on the license. It is also open to modification, commercial use and others. In some cases with different licenses, the commercial use, for example, can be prohibited. Well, from software engineer point of view, I like working with open source software because it allows me to see what is exactly inside, and if I want to modify it, for example, I have a specific project and I need to take a part, at least a part of that code, or I need to take the whole code and modify it according to my needs, I can do just that. Or if I want to integrate it as a component in my project, I can do that as well. And if there are any problems, bugs arise, I can also debug that because I can see the source code. With the closed source software, it can get complicated because it essentially is a black box for you. So if there is a bug and you feel that, and you think that the source of the bug is in that piece of software which has closed source code, then you actually have no choice other than to contact the person who wrote and published that code. For me, it's a lot about convenience. The cost matters as well. I mean, as long as people use it according to the license, and license in most of the cases, in all of the cases, is very clear. Normally, actually, there is a main distinction between different licenses is that are you allowed to commercially use this piece of software or hardware or not? That's the main distinction. Yeah, so I don't think the intellectual property can be a concern. If you're sharing it, you're sharing it, right? Everybody? Well, I mean, no, not everybody, but yes and no. It's like, look at Microsoft. Like, Microsoft used to be really closed source, really protective, just maybe a dozen of years ago, or maybe 20 years ago, something like that. But now I guess they have a lot of open source contributions, and they own GitHub as well. Open source has the benefit not only being more accessible, easier to debug, and cheap or free, it also has the benefit of added security. Especially if you have your source code on an open platform such as GitHub, everybody can inspect the code. If there are bugs or security vulnerabilities, people can find them and correct them. So I think the main example here would be Linux kernel. So it's there in the open. People from various companies participate in maintaining, and there's this trust in the system because everybody can see what's going on, right? This is not possible with closed source hardware. It is very sustainable, I think. Like, yeah, pretty much. I mean, it definitely grew a lot in recent years comparing to the beginning of the century. Like, 20 years has passed. Open source community is definitely going forward strong. So I think it's doing great so far. Yes and no. It's like not everybody knows what a compiler is and how it is different from linker, but that's okay. Not everybody does software engineering, right? Cooking is open source too. Almost any, I guess. It's like I'm not sure, you probably can correct me if I'm wrong. I think, for example, Tesla was open sourcing, obviously not all of it, but some of the designs. I think the drivetrain is kind of open source, and their idea behind that is to just drive the progress forward in electric cars. So there is that. Basically, if you have the will as a company or a person to share, because first of all, like, what are the reasons for sharing your work or creating it as open source projects from the beginning? I guess one of the main reasons is you want the people to use it. That's the first one. And the second one, I guess you also want people to help you to develop it because you think it's important. So that was the case with Tesla, for example, right? And similar with me, like I've got open source project as well. And that's the motivation, right? I think that's important. I want to share with people, and I want other people to use and also build on it. Sure. It's definitely going to be much more annoying. It's just like you can just like take as a software engineer. If I want to do something, there are already a lot of other projects that I can borrow the code or borrow the components from and then build on that, right? So if everything is closed source, then I guess everybody would have to start from scratch every day. Yeah, and that's slow. Yeah, I know. You said casually. Open source.